So let's get right into on the hot seat. And so we're going to have with us our interviewer for On the Hot Seat, who is Safiya Noble. Safiya is the David O. Sears Presidential Endowed Chair of Social Sciences and Professor of Gender Studies, African American Studies, and Information Studies at UCLA. It seems like you should just say you're not a professor of physics and then everything else you do have. She's also the director of the Center on Race and Digital Justice and co-director of the Mindaru Initiative on Tech and Power at the UCLA Center for Critical Internet Inquiry. And she serves as the interim director of the UCLA Data X Initiative, leading work in critical data studies for the campus. Because that leaves her a lot of free time. She's also the author of the best-selling book on racist and sexist algorithmic harm in commercial search engines, entitled Algorithms of Oppression: How Search Engines Reinforce Racism. In 2021, she was recognized as a MacArthur Foundation Fellow for her groundbreaking work on algorithmic discrimination. She's a board member of the Cyber Civil Rights Initiative, serving those vulnerable to online harassment, and provides expertise to all sorts of civil rights and human rights organizations. She's a researcher associate at the Oxford Internet Institute at the University of Oxford, where she's a chartering member of the International Panel on the Information Environment. And in 2022, she was recognized as the inaugural NAACP Archewell Digital Civil Rights Award recipient. I'm exhausted already, but really excited, and I can't believe she's made time in all of that to be with us this morning. So we're really happy to welcome Safiya Noble with us today. So Algorithms of Oppression is about search engines reinforcing racism. Now I'd like to introduce Rajen Sheth, who was previously the VP of Google Cloud AI and Industry Solutions as part of a 17-year career at Google, where he built products that enable enterprises to transform themselves through AI and design products for Google Cloud's key industries: healthcare, retail, financial products, media, entertainment, and manufacturing. Before that, he had led the development of Android and Chrome for business and education, including the Android for Enterprise products, Chromebooks for education product line, and Chromebooks and Chrome browser for enterprise. He also helped create and lead product development for Google Apps for Enterprise and Education, now known as Google Workspace, used by over 5 million businesses and 200 million students. He is the CEO and founder of Kyron Learning. If you've stopped by the Kyron table, if you haven't, please do. If you haven't, then you met Kyron last night during our drunk lightning talks when Ted gave his talk, or if you weren't listening then or you'd already passed out, Ted gave us a little bit of insight about table 23 during our table exercise yesterday. So Kyron's been in the house and present the entire time. So please welcome to the stage for our on the hot seat conversation, Safiya Noble and Rajen Sheth.
This session has been promoted. Thanks so much for that. After hearing your intro, your bio as well, I was thinking that maybe my book forced you out of Google, but I'm not going to take credit for that. But I do want to know, Google's from my vantage point, a tough company to work in because a lot of compromises have to get made every day. And obviously, it's the kind of company that has been brought up on charges by the Federal Trade Commission. It's often also, as a company, in the hot seat for its business practices, monopolistic business practices in particular. So I think we all want to know, why'd you leave Google to do this?
Great question. And for me, it was a very personal decision. I'd been at Google for 17 years. It was actually a fantastic place to be. But for me, where I kind of got to is I wanted to look at the next 20 years and what kind of impact I wanted to have on society over the next 20 years. And ended up deciding to leave as a result of that. Google is actually, especially at the very beginning, was a very mission-driven organization. And at the time, it was very easy to do things that were mission-driven. So for example, when we launched Google Apps for Education, our founders let us give it away for free to everyone with no business objective in mind. They were those kinds of people. But I think anytime an organization gets bigger and is a public company, there's more and more and more pressure on being able to continue to grow, and it becomes harder and harder to do things purely for mission. And for me, I wanted to do something purely for mission, and so I left to do two things. One is to explore education outside of technology. So I joined a school board, I've been advising nonprofits, but then also to start a company really from the ground up, built for mission, starting it as a public benefit company, getting investors that understand that mission, populating it with as many educators as engineers, things like that, and that's made all the difference. And I feel like if you can be in an organization where the North Star points to that mission, you can do a lot more.
Okay, but some people would say that these products that are given away for free aren't really free, right? They're it's the network effect, getting as many people into the network, using the product as possible, capturing an audience. What they trade off is their data, their privacy, a whole host of things. So how are you grappling with that reality? Because I think we got to double click a little bit on this idea that if we give it away for free, it's somehow benevolent.
Yeah, and that is fair. And I think that you should look at that with any product that you use. And I can tell you from the inside conversations, because I was the one that pitched Google Apps for Education, the reason that was given away for free really was to give back to education. So for example, we turned off all ads. We made sure that all data that was there was completely private to the student. Everything was controlled by the colleges and by the institutions. And that was really kind of the goal behind that. That said, there are lots of free products out there where that is not the goal. And I think that it is a very good, it really is incumbent upon both companies as well as individuals to really discern what is the intent of every product.
Are you stressed right now about where this interview might go?
Not at all.
Okay, good. I'm just doing a pulse check. I want to make sure we're all okay. Okay, you mentioned that Kyron is a public benefit corporation. Mm-hmm. Public benefit corporations have been in the news because OpenAI, as you know, announced that it was a public benefit corporation. It also had this kind of nonprofit veneer. It alleged that it was also taking on a different model, let's say, that would be a benefit to the public. And of course, that was a total bait and switch. So tell us about your why a public benefit corporation? What are you really doing here?
Well, I actually don't think it's enough to be a public benefit corporation. I think you need to have two other big elements in play there. One, you need to, from a leadership level, truly believe in the mission and actually drive that mission in every decision that gets made. And then two, you have to have investors that also believe in that mission and are willing to stick with that mission as well. And I think that when you look at OpenAI, it is tough. That is a concern that I have. Especially given the amount of funding that you're looking at. Anytime you take in $6 billion of funding, investors are putting that in with the expectation of getting $60 billion out of it. And I think that is a concern. It's hard to be a public benefit company and actually do public benefit when you are beholden to investors in that way. In our case, I made sure that, one, deliberately we had investors that bought into the mission. We only took investors that were impact investors that have experience in education. And in addition to that, I, as a leader, every single day have to make that trade-off and have to figure out, okay, what we're doing, are we able to do it for the mission or not?
Okay, so let's talk about the context and give everybody a little sense of kind of what your company does, in the weeds, so we really understand. I mean, I know that you work to kind of enhance education, and a lot of companies, software companies and other kinds of companies, develop products that are for a constituent group, And the constituents are so far away from the product development that the product ends up being harmful in the end. So tell us how you're developing this work and how you're ensuring that it stays aligned, but even more than like mission alignment and these kinds of ideas, like how are you not screwing over teachers?
Yeah.
I mean, because that's really what we want to know.
It is absolutely a great question, and that's something I thought about from the very beginning. So one of the things when I first left Google, honestly, I thought I knew about education, and then I started to talk to educators, and I realized I knew nothing about education. And so
I say this to my computer science students all the time. You have no business designing technology for society, and you know nothing about society.
yeah, no, I think that is true. And what is interesting is I actually think that a lot of technologists think they know, but they actually don't. And so what was the most humbling thing for me was to start to talk to educators and to realize what they have to go through every single day. And so when we built the company, we built it for something where we can really empower educators. But it's not enough to say that. So what we did was we actually have half of our company is made up of educators and half the company is made up of technologists. And I'll tell you, that's not easy. So we have our two examples of this, Emily Joy, who heads our education team, and Ted Kim, who heads our product team. Both of them are former educators. And so I deliberately brought in educators into a variety of positions. The debates we have are not easy because from an education point of view, there's a certain set of things that you need to get to be strong for education and strong for educators and to be able to really help educators. And on the other hand, a lot of those things are not always possible with the technology. And so you have to have that debate and figure out what kinds of steps we can take. The other thing is the audience. So there's educators, but there are also the students you're building for. A lot of times, I think a lot of companies make mistakes by focusing on an audience that is, audiences of privilege. And what we deliberately did was our first set of users were audiences with underrepresented groups in underserved communities. And so that gives us a design point where we can continue to get feedback to make sure that this is really driving equitable access.
Okay, so I want to push you on this, and you get to be the proxy representative of all of Silicon Valley on this question, so it's no pressure.
Big role.
Yeah, you got this. People like me would argue, why not just take the money and pay the teachers instead of putting the money into the technology? You can clap to that because I know a lot of us are feeling that. So why not put the $1 billion into improving the public education system so that we have higher quality, high touch? Why do we need to put the $1 billion into, I'm not saying you have the $1 billion, but I'm saying,
I wish I did,
Why not just why put it into the tech instead of the people?
Yeah, I think that, I don't think it's an either or. I agree with you 150%. I think that what has been humbling for me is to be on a school board. And what's been interesting there is to see how many things technology cannot solve. So, for example, the teacher shortage out there right now is absolutely ridiculous. And how we treat teachers is crazy. Teaching is the most important profession out there, as important as doctors, more important than engineers. But we don't pay our teachers as a result of that commensurately. It's a big societal problem. On top of that, you have the kinds of situations that students are going through post-COVID and also with families. And then you have all of the structural problems that are there. A lot of these things are not things that technology can solve, and we need to fund those kinds of things. And I really do wish that more corporations would get involved to do that. Now, that said, it's not an either or. Technology can actually help with a lot of that. So yesterday I thought a lot of the conversation around how do we meet students where they are and how do we scale to reach more students was really salient. And I think those are areas that technology can really help with. And that's really what we're trying to help with what we're doing. But I think both sides, so both things have to happen in order for us to reshape the system.
You mentioned corporations helping, and here we are. We're in California. I work in the University of California as a faculty member. We are, our buildings are crumbling across the system from K through higher education. the students are struggling, the lecturers are struggling, people are on strike. The system is supported by taxpayers, but corporations, for the most part, don't pay taxes. So I want to understand this, because what I see as I look out is that Silicon Valley in particular is deeply implicated in getting every kind of tax break possible, not paying taxes into the system, offshoring their profits, I could go on, and creating the conditions of crisis, and then rushing in and selling their wares to the state of California and school districts and counties, and saying, now we've got the techno solution, and really siphoning off money both ways. So what do you say on behalf of Silicon Valley about that?
Well, I don't know if I can really speak on behalf of Silicon Valley, because my own personal view is completely in agreement with you, that I do think corporations have to do more. And because, for example, the fact that for our schools we're just relying on property tax dollars is not enough. You need a lot more to be able to fund schools and be able to make it such that students get through a K-12 education in a solid place that they can go into the universities that we have here, and the universities are able to provide a lot. But again, I don't think it's an either or. I think that we need to think about how can we change the system, both in terms of what we can do to better fund the system, but also things like technology. And technology is not the only vector, but things like technology can help to change the system as well.
Are you willing to lead the effort in the Valley to get the companies to pay taxes?
I would love to. And in my case, I voted with my feet, and I left for that reason. And I could have taken the easy route, and I could have stayed for the next 20 years in general technology and looked at the next technology and the next technology. I wanted to focus my career on purpose. And so that's why I left to do what I'm doing. And I'm hoping that I can get others to do so as well.
Yeah, we need you to do that, okay? All right. All right, before I open it up and let you all ask a couple of questions out there, so also get your fiery poker ready. I want to know, someone's blowing me up. It's like these robocalls. I'm voting for Kamala. You don't have to keep calling me. It's too much. I got it. How are you going to ensure that AI doesn't replace the workers? Because a lot of teachers, a lot of artists, a lot of people, I heard there was a spicy session yesterday saying that something about like professors were basically like YouTube content creators. I don't know who said that, but if I find you, we're going to have words, all right? But people are worried about, the kind of the flattening of expertise. They're worried about the kind of dumbing down of the American population. People are worried about AI replacing them. What are you working on? How are you dealing with that?
Yeah, so I fundamentally believe that AI needs to empower educators. And actually, I think it goes beyond that. One, I don't think AI can replace educators. Anybody that spent time in a classroom or in a lecture hall or in an office hours session, you know that it's not something that can be just replaced by a robot. You know that human touch and that subject matter expertise is really what really drives that with students. And so I think that we can have technology that can supplement that and empower the teachers to better reach their students, to reach more students. But I don't think it can replace. And I think that that's where we need to focus. The other thing, just as insight from other technologies or other industries, every AI project I've ever worked on that tries to replace something has failed. Every AI project I've worked on where there's an expert in the loop and has actually tried to empower people, whether it's everything from doctors to customer service to financial institutions, those have succeeded. And so I think that's what we're going to start to see, is that those kinds of applications of AI are the ones that actually succeed.
So we have so much racial discrimination, other forms of class-based discrimination, discrimination against immigrants and people who are English as second language or third language students. how are you ensuring that the kinds of technologies that you're building aren't reinforcing these kinds of already existing discrimination? We know that any kind of AI that's trained on data from the past, which is all it can do, is going to, in essence, predict those same kinds of problems into the future. So how are you, if Google couldn't solve that, how are you going to solve that?
Yeah, and so I'll tell you about kind of what we were trying to do at Google with that, and then what I'm trying to do now. So at Google, one of the things we put in place was a set of AI principles that we put in lines that we wouldn't cross with the projects that we would do with customers. And we held to it, and it took a lot of, I got a lot of pressure to hold to those, against holding to those, but we were able to hold to those.
I just want you to know I wrote a book about all the ways that failed, just so we're on the same page together.
Sure.
Okay.
And it is, yeah, that completely makes sense because it is not an easy problem to do. But like, for example, one of the things that reminds me of what you're talking about is we had a bank that came to us and they wanted to automate the loan approval process using AI. And what's interesting is that that's neither a good or a bad thing. It all depends on how you do it. So for example, there are companies out there that are doing exactly that, but they're looking at new data to make it such that you can open up loans to more people that ordinarily wouldn't be able to get credit. What the bank wanted to do was take their exact loan approvals and feed that into a machine. But what you're doing there is you're basically putting all of that bias into the machine and you're encoding it. And so what we need to do is figure out how do we do implementations that open up opportunities rather than encoding, than encode bias. You're right that a lot of algorithms right now have bias in them. If you look at, for example, facial recognition, it is known that facial recognition doesn't work as well for people with brown skin. And so you need to look at really kind of 4 things anytime you look at an AI system: the bias that's there and what can you do to put the right data to correct for it, accuracy of the system, the unintended consequences. The same technology can be used for something where you can recover from a mistake and places where you can't, and then the privacy. And so anytime I look at an AI system, I look at those 4. We've been taking those same 4 with Kyron Learning, and we've been making sure that we are able to meet that. And I think a key part of that is to have that educator in the loop that's going to be able to look at this and say, you know what, the thing that you produced is wrong. We need to correct it in this way, and this way, and this way.
Yeah, it was 3 Black women scholars, Joy Bulwamini, Timnit Jabru, and Deb Raji, who wrote the famous study now, Gender Shades, that blew the lid off of facial recognition being racially discriminatory. And so I appreciate you bringing that up because we are just at the beginning of trying to, and I think for many people in this room, those of us who are scholars, we're the people and activists and people really on the front lines, people who are working with these technologies, who see the failures and then have to try to raise those up and have the industry address them. All right,
One thing I just want to say on that, I think it's incumbent upon all of us as citizens to push on companies to think that way. I'll tell you that a lot of companies where we told them no, and we told them, we can't do this because of these issues, they didn't believe us. And you know what they did is they went to other providers that would work with them. And we need to be able to put pressure on the providers to make it such that, 1, there's a level playing field, but 2, every organization or everyone that is thinking about using AI is going in with it eyes wide open with all of this background in mind.
Yeah, absolutely right. All right, well, I ran out of time, so there we go. But I just want to say, I'm sorry, we don't have time for questions because I was really trying to grill the hell out of Rajen. And, yeah, I did my best. I hope that you're a great sport, and I really appreciate you for letting me mess with you here a little bit. Any closing words that I'm going to let you actually have the last word here. You've got 30 seconds.
Well, I think these are incredibly important conversations. What I'll say as my last word is that I've been in Silicon Valley for 30 years. I've seen pretty much every major technology kind of come up from the ground up. What we didn't do with so many other technologies is we didn't look at the very beginning about what are the unintended consequences that can happen. We have an opportunity right now because with AI, it's still very nascent. And we can look at what the unintended consequences are going to be 10 or 20 years from now, but we have to act now in order to stop that. And so that's what hopefully we all can work together to do.
Absolutely, heard it there. All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Rajen.
Thanks a lot.